we're going to get like wildly analytical about this episode that we watched
Promises.
in the short space of half an hour, I guess, talking about the episode Jesse-Belle from season 4 of that the Twilight Zone show, and this is the podcast, that Twilighty show about that zone.
Are you sure about that?
Am I sure about the name of the podcast?
Yeah,
I'm
you
pretty
seem
damn
a
sure
little...
about that. It's episode 7 from season 4, stars the gorgeous, and I mean gorgeous with a capital G, Anne Francis.
All right, keep it in your pants.
As the titular character, Jesse-Belle, and co-starring James Best, Roscoe P. Coltrane as Billy Ben, and Laura Devon as Elwyn Glover. Elwyn is a Welsh name, very similar to your name.
Yes.
And actually, this story does go back. It's written by Earl Hamner Jr., and he wrote it over a weekend practically. They needed an episode from him quick because an episode that they were about to do fell through. So they called up Earl Hamner Jr., who's like a very fast writer, and he conjured up the story over the weekend. They approved it on a Monday, and he finished the teleplay by Friday. So he dashed this off as quickly as possible because he knows a lot of these old tales. This story actually goes back to the time of the Druids, as Sterling says, because it's a story. It's kind of a timeless story. It's 2 women fighting over 1 man, and this was how stories were written back then, before a lot of modern society took its place and turned men into the predators in situations like that. So I was thinking it's a very rare story in that way, and you had a problem with my reasoning there because you're always telling me that there are stories of women chasing men around, and there might be.
There are. I think it's very common.
I don't think it's as common as men chasing women. It's always about men chasing women. Women don't like men. They don't want to be anywhere near them. They don't lust after them. They don't crave them.
I don't think that's
mainly
true at all.
That's every story that I ever see.
All right, I don't agree. I've seen plenty of stories with women chasing men, for one thing.
Like what?
And for another thing, even when I see stories where men chase women, I don't see what your objection is to it.
No, where men chase women?
Yeah.
Because it makes us look to be predators, and we're living like in new times now.
What's wrong with healthy romantic attraction? Am I missing something?
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just been outlawed in pop culture. You're not allowed to have that anymore.
This is some paranoia that you have. I don't think that's true at all.
It's a true paranoia.
A true paranoia? Well, maybe not paranoia.
If I have paranoia about it, it's because of everything I'm seeing, everything that we're hearing about. And we're hearing about this new radical feminism. We hear about the rape culture. We hear about inequity and all that stuff.
But you are so focused on looking for stories like that.
I'm not
in
looking.
Everyday life.
It happens.
Because I don't seem to be stumbling across this kind of thing as much as you seem to be doing. Think about what TV shows do you watch that are current? So what do you...
Big Bang Theory?
That's not... Well, okay, yes. But I was thinking that's not current, but I guess it is. But we're seeing reruns of it. But no, I was thinking more of like, okay, we've been watching The Orville. You see lots of romantic attraction in that, and men are interested in women. I can't remember the character's names, but the redhead guy is always trying to find a girl.
Yeah,
and the captain,
he's comic relief.
The captain wants to have a relationship, with a nice girl. We saw that.
Yeah, but they're all backing off from this idea of men pursuing women.
Says you.
And we're talking, and the cat is going.
She wants to have
She was quiet. She was actually quiet for a little while there. Yeah.
I think maybe the point of it is more to say it's both parties have a choice, and of course that's true.
Well, okay. We start with this story. It takes place in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia.
Okay.
What the Blue Ridge Mountains are the very tops of the Appalachian Mountain Range, and they extend from Pennsylvania all the way down to South Carolina, parts of Virginia, Tennessee, and Maryland, and places like that. But I'm guessing this is Virginia because of their accents, I'm assuming. And you have 2 girls. You have Jesse-Belle, who is the evil brunette, if you will, and then you have the angelic blonde, who is Elwyn. Billy Ben is going to marry Elwyn. Apparently, he had a relationship with this Jesse-Belle chick, and she doesn't like that he walked out on her or something like that. Or maybe he wanted something a little more stable.
That's your theory. I mean, so what we get from the dialogue is 2 things. He's been seeing Elwyn, and because when he proposes to her, there's some lines about she like jokes around with him about how he's like a tease and a liar and all this stuff. Then we also see Ellen talking to to Billy Ben. I mean, we see Jesse-Belle talking to Billy Ben and referring to the fact that all the different places they apparently fooled around.
Jesse-Belle,
Don't you come near me.
I thought you might want to wish us well, Jess.
You'll have nothing from me.
No need for you to take on so.
What you want me to do? Run in there, throw my arms around her, tell her how glad I am?
Jess, I'm sorry.
Remember the night we clung together in the sweet night grass, top of Eagle Rock Mountain? The moonlight made us see a silver mist on the fog below.
I remember.
And the day we ran through the Scotch broom field, and the sun was blazing hot, and we fell together, and you touched me. And the fire in me burned as hot as the white sun.
The fire's turned to ashes now, Jess.
It still burns. Here.
But it's different with Elwyn and me.
So it's clearly implied that they had some sort of romantic and sexual relationship. So if he was seeing Elwyn, he was two-timing her with Jesse-Belle. Which, by the way, Jesse-Belle seems to me, even though you didn't like this idea, seems to be kind of obvious that it's a relationship with the name Jezebel from the Bible.
Well, no, it's not that. It's just that if you like the name, you didn't name your kid Jesse-Belle.
Right.
You back in those days, and I'm even talking about the early '60s. It was kind of like part of this whole folk tales about left-handed children, and how they had to be taught to use their right hand instead of their left hand because the left hand was considered the mark of the devil or something like that. A name like Jezebel was a no-no, as was Delilah. Delilah was not a name that you gave your daughter.
Well, I think the stigma of Delilah definitely has worn off. I've met a few Delilahs in my
Well,
life.
yeah, and then
I've never met a
turned around
Jezebel,
and gone ahead and named girls any ridiculous name they can come up with, even one derived from
Ridiculous?
King Lear and one of his daughters. But but and for everything you know about Regan in that story, she's a wicked, wicked creature. But I always like the name anyway, and I think Delilah is a beautiful name, and then Jezebel is too. But Jesse-Belle is I think part of that indication. I grew up, I got family from the South, and there were things that they did not do, and that was one of them.
Okay.
So, but Jesse-Belle comes very close to Jezebel. Obviously, you're making that connection.
I think I'm supposed to. I'm sure the writer knows what he's doing, is what I'm saying.
Jesse-Belle, if I'm not mistaken, is French. So she's not, I mean, like, the thing about it is, she's not evil.
Well, of course not.
And I there's very little because I think the Elwyn character is not written very well because she doesn't really seem to have much of a personality in that way. The only people that we kind of get to know more are Jesse-Belle and Billy Ben there, and of course Granny Hart.
I mean, Jesse-Belle's not evil; she's tragic.
She's a tragic character. This is a ballad. This is what was known as a ballad back in those days. They didn't have newspapers, so town gossip was usually spoken in the form of a song. So you sang a song, or you wrote it down on a big piece of paper and you nailed it to a tree. So people went over to the tree, read what was going on in the town.
Do they read it or do they sing it?
Well, I mean, you can sing it, you can read it, you
Oh,
can do
okay.
whatever you want with it. It's music, man. But that's mainly how news was spread back then, before the days of the printing press and all that stuff. So this was what was called a broadside ballad. This was the first kind of sharing of stories after the beginning of the Age of Reason.
So there's a lot of dances in this episode, huh? Like the first thing that
Lots
happens
of hoedowns, yeah.
is a dance where we see
It's very festive. They didn't have television.
we see him propose to Elwyn, and then we see him sort of dump Jesse-Belle, and then after that first dance, then Jesse-Belle goes off to see Granny Hart to get a little assistance.
Played by Jeanette Nolan, one of the great actresses of back in the day, the silent and stage era. She was also in a Man from U.N.C.L.E. episode I remember we watched, playing another creepy woman who has a dungeon under her estate, and she traps Napoleon and Ilya down there. And she was also in this Mystery Science Theater movie we watched recently, Avalanche. She played Rock Hudson's boozing mom. Dies horribly.
I can picture that.
Imagine.
But she's
Almost getting killed from an avalanche. You get shipped off in an ambulance, and then the ambulance goes right over a cliff. I mean, it lights on fire right away. It's such a terrible way to die.
she is creepy, but she isn't like, I don't know. To me, I give them credit. She's not a stereotypical witch. She's just creepy in her own way. Let's just say she says a lot of inappropriate things and does a lot of giggling, does a lot of laughing, a lot of creepy laughing, and you're not really sure
She kind of strikes me as a weird Satanist. I don't understand.
what's her deal. Mm.
She obviously has some kind of a successful, thriving small business going because
Yeah.
I think people go there not just to put control over people that they want to fall in love with them or something, but maybe she has potions for all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
She's like the doctor, if you will. I don't know. The surgeon barber. Anne Francis goes to Granny Hart. She wants Billy Ben to fall in love with her, even though I really kind of get the indication he could go either way on that. He could fall in love with her. He probably is in love with her. He probably just... well, actually, you said there was some motivation for why he was marrying this woman other than any kind of love.
They talked about it in the dialogue. They said that her father was the richest in the town, which, the town's pretty small, so that's not a huge statement. But he has money and he has land that he's going to give her, like as a dowry when she gets married. So
he's
he's
really marrying her
making-
for money.
possibly, yeah. I mean, it seems like he has affection for her, but he's definitely making an ambitious decision to marry her and not Jesse-Belle, who's clearly dirt poor. That's when we see her.
She's poor.
Yeah.
Her mom is poor.
So she goes to Granny Hart, asks for a way to get Billy Ben to fall in love with her, which involves a sacrifice, a bargain that she has to make.
You better run along home and live your life without Billy Ben Turner.
I won't have any life without him. You gotta help me.
Well, I got something I could give you, but the price is high.
What is the price?
You'll know in the midnight hour of time.
Whatever it is, I'll pay.
She gives her a potion to swallow, right? There is a curse attached to this, of course, because this is how things are done. There's always which I never understood about witchcraft or even Satanism in that way. She has to give up her soul at some point, but she does give the witch money. I mean, like, there's some money changing hands too.
I guess it's not enough. I mean, it's always that way in these kinds of stories when you're trying to take a shortcut or you're trying to. There's always some horrible thing you have to give up in the bargain.
And she gives up her soul, and then she'll transform into a leopard midnight until dawn, like every
Right.
night. I guess for the rest of her life or something. I mean,
I assume so.
it's not going to do very well to be transforming. And you get this guy to fall in love with you, and he does. I mean, like he immediately after that we go back to the action.
We have another dance, and he
just completely
drops Elwyn like a hot potato and goes straight for Jesse-Belle, and he's in love with her. And Elwyn's parents are shocked, and they say
This is very scandalous.
yeah. But Elwyn saw the look on Billy Ben's face, so she knows that's it. She's lost him.
Yeah, and she kind of know. I mean, like everybody's like, everybody's acting like, oh, this is terrible or something. But she seems to know that there's a curse. There's definitely some witchery afoot. So I mean, like it seems like they just take these brief interludes to make out under a tree,
Right.
under the night sky, and then she has to run off.
She has to run off to turn into a
She's like, I got
cat.
to take off. I got to turn into a leopard for a little while. I'll be back later.
Yeah, so she's got her man now, but it's not that going that well for her because she has to run around being a cat every night. Apparently the bargain, the price she had to pay was a bit more than she expected.
So James Best calls off the wedding to Elwyn and gets ready to get married to Jesse-Belle. But there's a leopard that's been, making the rounds around their town, and they sent out for a hunting party, and they try to find the leopard.
Including all the men in the town, including Elwyn's father, including Billy Ben himself.
So do they not know that they're going for they're going out to kill a woman that turns into a leopard, or not?
I don't think they... I mean, I don't know if they know. So obviously Elwyn knows because she pays a little visit to near where Jesse-Belle lives, and they have a little talk about it, and clearly Elwyn is not directly saying it, but she clearly has the hint that Jesse-Belle used magic to bewitch Billy Ben, and that she kind of knows that she's the cat that's been going around terrorizing everybody. So I'm guessing if Elwyn guesses that, then maybe the men do. I don't know. Sometimes they make it seem like men are dumb and they don't understand these things. That's not really clear to me.
Well, yeah, he's the object. And that's why I say that this is different. This is, for lack of a better word, a feminist story. Because it's about two women fighting over a man. And, in a way, possession of that man. And the cat analogy is important because the leopard is a predator. Siren knows that, too, because she's related to them. And James Best here is the prey. And whatever she turns into, usually it's something. Later on, it's a spider. There's a black spider on a wedding dress, which is a very effective visual to see. But this is how I see feminism becoming more prominent, and it was becoming more prominent in the early '60s. It would then explode along. It would coincide with the sexual revolution of the '70s, the early '70s, and then everything else. So it all connects in that way. That's why I think it's an excellent episode. I think it's a great episode actually, for that reason.
Yeah, I don't really agree. I don't think it's a feminist tale at all.
You don't?
Sorry,
No?
I mean, no, not for me. It's not my idea of what a feminist tale would be. A feminist tale to me would be the problem is like these young women, and I assume it's not just them, but other
But
women in the
these
town.
two young women represent empowerment.
I don't see it that way. They are because they're hung up on needing to marry this guy. To me, a feminist tale is a woman
He needs to marry. They don't need to marry him.
That's
He
not
needs
the way
to
I
marry.
see it. They need to get married.
They don't need to
a
get married.
husband.
Nobody's
They
pregnant.
do.
Or
It's
is
not
that
about pregnancy. It's just about like that's what women did.
Yeah, just because that's what they did. There's not a problem with that. They still do that now.
They do,
Women
but
still
that's-
do that,
but
even
they
after
would be
all the
like-
radical feminism we've heard.
Jesse-Belle wouldn't
There are
have to
still
go
women
and
that
turn
marry for
herself
money,
into
or
a-
they marry for status, or they marry to not be alone.
She's gone to the extreme lengths to go to a witch and turn herself into a cat because she has to have this guy.
She has to have him.
There's no internal reserves in herself that are like,
She absolutely wants him.
you know,
She desires him.
maybe my life would be better. Maybe I could have my own life if I just forget about this guy and let Ellen
That's
have
what
him.
you're
That
thinking,
never.
though. That's not what women. That's not what
I'm
all women think.
I'm
and
women.
it's-
I'm a woman.
But it's certainly not what all women thought back then. What would you be, some kind of weird spinster?
Look,
these
neither
days?
of us know what women thought.
Look, I don't
back
need a
then.
man. You know, why do I think I'm nothing without a man or something?
Right,
like that?
exactly. But
No.
that's why it's not a feminist
They love
tale.
him.
Okay, that's fine. Then it's a love story. It's a tragedy, but it's not a feminist tale.
Let's say it wasn't James Best. Let's say it was Harrison Ford.
It doesn't make any difference how good looking he is or isn't. Although, yeah, I can't get over the fact that he is in fact a Roscoe P. Coltrane. That's just not
James
something.
Best was kind of he was a studly.
He was all right,
character
but
back then. He appeared in a lot of movies, mainly B movies, but you know he was always a presence in those things. Yeah, he became Roscoe P. Coltrane.
that's
later.
a very memorable part. Frankly, his being Roscoe is like more memorable than the Duke boys were as far acting wise.
Can we talk about Anne Francis for a second?
Knock yourself out.
She's one of these stone cold, drop dead, gorgeous women from back in the day. She was in Forbidden Planet, where she wore next to nothing in that movie, and it was a very big deal back then.
I think I might have heard a song about that somewhere where she was in Forbidden Planet.
Yes, she was forever immortalized in a song from Rocky Horror Picture Show. And she appeared, this is her second of 2 Twilight Zone appearances. Her first one was the one about the mannequins, the After Hours, where she, come on, baby, give me a break here. She goes into a department store needing to buy a golden thimble, and then it turns out that she's actually one of these mannequins, and apparently the mannequins, each one of these mannequins gets to become human for about a month and then go out and hang out amongst them and then come back.
You can do that on another podcast if you didn't already. But wasn't she Honey West? Speaking of cats, she was Honey West, and she
was
walked around with
Honey West. She had an ocelot.
an
named Bruce.
ocelot. Yes, okay.
She was a sexy private investigator, and again, this is transformative. These roles are very transformative. She also appeared in a couple of Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Honey
episodes,
West,
too.
there's a feminist for you. She's a private eye, and sure, she's got a boyfriend, but it's not like she needs to
Well,
be.
no, she doesn't really have a boyfriend per se. She has a business partner.
There you go. She doesn't even have a boyfriend. It's just
Kind of
a
like
business
Remington
partner.
Steele in that way,
Yeah,
except she had the balls to be a female private eye and not use a fake.
Not use a fake name, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So
and
anyway,
but again, I do see this as feminist because in 1963 you did not have stories like this. You did not have stories where women were pursuing men. You had men pursuing women. Women are chaste. You know, you're not. This is one night. You're not turning me down, Scarlett. You know, that was how.
I don't think
that
that's
was
true.
That was the communication. That was the language between men and women back then. Was that a woman was pursued and then eventually captured and put into a cage.
I'd have to
not unlike a leopard.
I'd have to research a bunch of movies from that time to see if the data
damn
stood out, but
well.
I don't.
You know
what was
damn
that
well.
movie
Look
you
at
showed
that.
me with Jimmy Stewart and some other blonde where she was a witch and she was chasing him?
Oh, that was Bell, Book, and Candle.
Bell, Book, and Candle.
Yeah, but he was clueless throughout the whole thing, and she was a
was
witch.
chasing him. I don't-
She was a witch, though. Witchcraft. I had this discussion with Eve. Eve made a very good point. What was it? She was talking about how shows like Bewitched. I think we were talking about Bewitched or something. That these represented some form or some analogy of first wave feminism, because witchcraft often had been seen. I mean, like the Salem witch hunts was mainly, to her thinking, it was a way of persecuting and punishing and torturing women. Especially maybe free thinkers and women that were educated, because women weren't educated back in those days. So any woman that came along might have represented a challenge to the patriarchy of that time. But here you have two aggressive female characters fighting each other over a man, and the man, of course, is clueless. The man is Jimmy Stewart in this situation. James Best is Jimmy Stewart.
All right.
But that's how I saw it, because you did not see things like that. You really didn't. Look at Star Trek. You never saw women pursuing Kirk. It was always Kirk pursuing women.
I don't think that's true. I'm sure there's episodes where women were pursuing Kirk.
Just, I don't know, to manipulate him in that way. But it had nothing to do with love. It had nothing to do with lust.
All right.
Now, our daughter here, who is an expert on animals, has constantly been telling me that this cat is a jaguar, not a leopard. We looked at pictures. I don't know. I really can't tell. It seems like jaguars are bigger. They're more meatier. They're probably more dangerous looking. But both are just incredibly beautiful animals.
Take the man you bargained for. Give him a witch's love. Nothing can change you, sugar. Witch you are, and witch you'll always be. You've paid the price. Take what you've paid for. Take what you've paid for. Take what you've paid for.
So what's happens to her and the cat?
Well, I mean, she's a cat again, and they go out with their hunting party. They find the cat, they shoot it. It disappears in a puff of smoke.
And or all that's
nobody
left,
gives it a second thought either.
right. All that's
Usually,
left is his wedding ring.
your jaguar or leopard hit by a bullet, boom,
Yeah, it'd be
or runs off or something like that. And
that's
meows.
true. No one comments on this.
Well,
he
that's
just picks up the
peculiar.
ring. It's like,
It looks like
So-
that cat there just disappeared into a cloud of smoke.
yeah, so maybe they did know some magical stuff was going on. And then immediately Billy Ben goes over and talks to Elwyn again, just subtly. He's like, "Oh, can I come visit you sometime?" And then the next thing we know, they're actually getting married.
They're getting married. Well, it's a year later.
A year later, right.
Because in the cloud of smoke, Billy Ben finds the ring
I said that, right.
that he gave to Jesse-Belle. So he grabs that ring, decides, hey, okay, maybe I was wrong about the whole thing. Elwyn is extremely patient throughout this whole thing, which is pretty shocking. So they have the wedding, and then there's a spider on her wedding dress, which I think is just the most awesome thing ever that you would ever see.
She keeps appearing as different creatures, and he realizes that she's not going to go away.
Yeah, she's just not. Appears as a mouse, too, at some point. A mouse on a grandfather clock. Again, a visual motif. Very interesting stuff. So he goes to Granny, and I think Granny Hart there tells him that he has to make an image of her and then stab it through the heart to finally just get rid of Jesse-Belle.
Yeah.
So he does. He takes Jesse-Belle's wedding dress, puts it on a mannequin or something. It's kind of a half-assed way to do it. It's
Yeah.
not exactly the
It wasn't
intricacy of voodoo.
It wasn't
that
the
you would
best
think.
doll I've ever seen. It was headless, but it got the job done when he stabbed it. Well, he stabbed it in the stomach, but we'll pretend it was the heart.
So he gets her in the stomach. And then Jesse-Belle, I guess, disappears or whatever. Spell is broken.
Or whatever.
Elwyn looks up and sees a falling star and says that somebody told her once a long time ago that when you see a falling star, it means a witch has died. I don't think I've ever heard that
I
one.
never heard that
But
one
it makes about as much sense as any kind of supernatural or superstitious belief. Well, these people may go to Sunday church, but they still believe in a lot of that stuff. White magic, black magic, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Earl Hamner, one of my favorite writers for the Twilight Zone. His first teleplay that he did was A Piano in the House, which I love that story. Do you remember that one?
Is that the one that like people would play it and it would change?
It would certainly turn them into something else. It would turn them into a
would-
character.
Well, so it would sort of make them into the most extreme form of their personality or something, or
The
make
most
their
extreme or
insides
the most
out.
childlike,
I guess
or the most childlike form of their personality too. Great episode. I really like that one a lot. Also, The Hunt, which I did with Scott Becker. Actually, we talked about that episode about this man and his dog, and they both die. They're not aware that they've died, and they're about to go into hell before some angel interferes and tells them they're going into heaven instead. And that's another great episode too. So Earl Hamner wrote a series of books called Spencer's Mountain, and those books are about like a simple life in the country. And those books would wind up becoming the Waltons, which he created and developed. And the Waltons, of course, was a very popular, long-running show back in the 70s. Sort of, we had a weird kind of return to simpler times in 70s television where we had the Waltons and we had Little House on the Prairie.
I guess that was popular at that time. Yeah.
Maybe there was a need for nostalgia, but Jesse-Belle is definitely part of that. And this is an interesting Twilight Zone episode because it doesn't have any of those tropes that you come to expect from Twilight Zone. You know how people, when they want to marginalize the Twilight Zone, they're always saying, oh well, it's the end of the world. There's a twist. It turns out it was Earth all along.
Right,
This is one of those episodes that defies that structure, and really what makes Twilight Zone one of the best television shows to ever been produced. And this is something that is lost now, even in the translation that Jordan Peele did with his CBS All Access version of the Twilight Zone.
Have you been watching that? I haven't seen it.
I haven't been watching it yet. There is an episode that's available on YouTube, I think, the pilot episode.
Oh.
But again, it's just missing that. It's missing from the reviews I've read. It's just missing that magic that the original show had. And even the 80s show, which lasted for a good time.
Well, I mean, this episode, I know you like it a lot. It doesn't really speak to me, even though I guess, according to what you're saying, it should because I'm a woman. It just doesn't. But I have to say, when you mentioned that we were doing it, I remembered it. It definitely stands out or makes a strong impression on you in that way. It doesn't run in together with all of the other Twilight Zone episodes. So I guess that speaks to its quality.
And it's there's this music that's heard throughout it that's telling you the story of it through
Yeah,
music,
they're singing the ballad of the story.
which we're going to end this episode with as part of the ending of that ballad. I think it's what I like about it is it's very sexy. It's a very sexy story. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Cat, people accept it's actually sexy. I'm talking about the remake, not the original. And it's about witchcraft, and it's about lust, and it's about passion and all that. It's again, you don't really get that much of that kind of lust or whatever, that passion in the Twilight Zone.
He's asking the cat, by the way, in case you're wondering why I didn't respond.
She didn't respond when I asked her a question. She has to talk while we're talking. It's part of her contract with the show. You didn't particularly like the episode, is that what?
No, I didn't say that. I just said that it didn't speak to me. I didn't really relate to it. I just said that it was memorable and it stood out. If I thought about Twilight Zone episodes, that would be one. I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember exactly that one. It doesn't. Some of the other ones, it just sort of runs together, a bunch of black and white episodes in my head. But this one, I guess maybe because it's so the melodrama and the unusual setting makes it stand out.
Funny story about this: when Hamner wrote the original draft, he wanted her to be turned into a tiger. And the producer was like, I can't use tigers. Number one, they're incredibly dangerous. Number two, they're extremely unreliable. And number three, they're not very good actors. He actually said here that the producer called him up and said, I'm up to my ass in tigers and none of them can act.
Boy, these tigers, they need to get a better agent.
So they changed it to a leopard, but he wanted it to be a black leopard so that it would match her hair.
Sure.
They couldn't find one. So they settled on the leopard. They were able to get that. And they actually built a cage around the camera crew when they were photographing the leopard because it was, of course, extremely dangerous. They also gave the leopard a sedative so he wouldn't go nuts and kill anybody. But the cat kept falling asleep.
A little too much sedative, a little too much.
So it just fell asleep during shooting. Also want to mention that Virginia Gregg is in this episode playing Ossie, I believe, the character Ossie, I'm not familiar with. But Virginia Gregg is very well known to me because she was one of the voices of Mrs. Bates in Psycho.
Oh, okay.
And she played the part in Psycho 2 and Psycho
Well,
3.
who could she have? Was she Jesse-Belle's mom or
No.
just some other
It was
background character? Okay.
Some other character.
right.
But you would know the voice because obviously it's the sound of a wicked old lady.
Right.
She did a lot of voiceover work, actually. Also, there's no narration at the end of the episode. It just ends with the song. Again, a very just distinctive episode in that way. But I really like it. It's one of my favorites from the 4th season. Again, it doesn't feel padded. It feels like a story is unfold, and so we're getting to see an episode that's actually kind of intended to be an hour-long episode for this.
Yeah. No, it was well paced. They filled the time and did a good job.
And I want to thank my daughter, Regan, for doing the picture of the leopard, which I hope you're looking at right now. She just dashed that off very quickly, but it took 2 days for me to prod her to color it a little bit for us, so that we could have a color image.
She likes to work in black and white, man. She's an artist. What can you say?
Yeah, she's temperamental as all hell. But thanks for watching this episode with me. I guess the next one we're going to be doing after that will be Printer's Devil, which is another kind of a Deal with the Devil episode. Another favorite of mine, starring the great Burgess Meredith. But
I think I remember that one.
yes,
Yeah.
you do. You probably do. Now, the next episode that we'll be talking about will be Miniature, starring Robert Duvall. And I'll be discussing that with Nicole Phelps. Thanks again for listening, and say good night.
Good night.
And we'll lead you off. We'll end this with the strains of the Ballad of Ellie and Jesse-Belle. Good night.
Fair was Ellie Glover, dark was Jesse-Belle. Both they loved the same man, and both they loved